Hey everyone, welcome back to Let's Talk. My name is John, and today we're going to be talking about one of the greatest trilogies of all time, the Back to the Future trilogy that ran from 1985 through 1990, created by Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis. All three films are directed by Robert Zemeckis. It was produced by Amblin Entertainment and distributed by Universal Pictures. And we're not only going to be talking about those three films, but we're also going to be talking about those Universal 4K Blu-rays that came out back in 2020. So the original Back to the Future was released on July 3rd, 1985, directed by Robert Zemeckis, written with him and Bob Gale, who created the entire franchise. But this had Steven Spielberg's stamp of approval on it. You know, he was really, it even says at the beginning of it, a Steven Spielberg production, and it feels like a Steven Spielberg film. You know, with that overbearing score, the adventurous plot, it's very lighthearted, never taking itself too seriously. It has the perfect amount of drama, but not enough to overwhelm you. The Huey Lewis and the News song. That's the power of love. I mean, this film took the world by storm in 1985, and it's incredible because it almost wasn't meant to be. They had originally cast Eric Stoltz, who many of you guys might know from the movie Mask, or as the friendly but overwhelmed drug dealer from Pulp Fiction.
Heroin is coming back in a big fucking way.
And he was originally tapped to play Marty McFly. They had actually shot 6 weeks of film with him, but he wasn't their original choice. They wanted Michael J. Fox from the beginning, but he was all wrapped up in family ties. His contract was ironclad. There was no way he can get out of it, so his agent didn't even bother telling him that the studio wanted him to be Marty McFly because there was just no way to get him out of that family ties contract. But they were having such a hard time making this film. Robert Zemeckis just couldn't see it with Eric Stoltz. The way Christopher Lloyd, who plays Doc Brown, put it, he just didn't have the right flair. He's a great actor, but he just wasn't flamboyant enough. He kind of wasn't getting the whole comedy thing. He was just playing this role a little too dramatic than what the movie was calling for. So they stopped production. They found a way for Michael J. Fox to work days on Family Ties and nights on Back to the Future so he could do it both. He wasn't sleeping. He felt like he was incoherent throughout the entire production. And when the movie was done, he was very worried that he gave a poor performance. But little did he know that this movie would become a monster hit and start a great trilogy of films. The original film follows around Marty McFly, a high school student.
Damn! I'm late for school!
Who has a great friendship with Dr. Emmett Brown. You know, he goes to his house, feeds his dog Einstein, and then he finds out that Doc Brown has created a time machine out of a DeLorean. Just because this has been his dream his entire life, he felt like he could do it. He's been working on this since the 1950s, and he finally nailed it. But on that one fateful day where he first tests it out, unfortunately, because he needed to get plutonium, he is murdered. And Marty's trying to escape, and when he does, the time machine was already set to 1955, and once that bad boy gets cooking up to 88 miles per hour, that's it. You're gonna see some real serious shit. So he takes off. He ends up in 1955. But he was warned, don't play around with anything there, and unfortunately, because he does, he ends up almost costing him and his entire family their lives, in a sense, just because he stops his dad, played by Crispin Glover in the first film. They would actually replace him in the second and third film and really limit that role, and actually, Crispin Glover ended up suing them for basically using his likeness, because they tried to play it off like that was Crispin Glover in the second and third Back to the Future film, when it really wasn't him. And I think he actually won that lawsuit. But because Michael J. Fox's Marty McFly knocked him out of the way, his dad never got to have that relationship with his mother, that defining moment that would actually start their love and would end up leading to their marriage and their kids, including Marty. So now the rest of the film, Marty has to go on a journey and try and get these two to actually rekindle what would become that old flame and end up getting married so that they could have kids, including Marty. And that's the basic premise of this movie. This movie has obviously crossed over into the pop culture. The prom scene at the very end is extremely iconic. Play the guitar just like he's ringing a bell. Go, go. Biff Tannen is one of the biggest movie villains of all time, to the point where the actor just can't stand being asked about it, because that's his only real iconic role, but it's so memorable, not just in the first film, but in the second film. Then when he plays Buford Mad Dog Tamlin in the last film, he is just perfectly cast, and he's awesome. You know, he's the villain you love to hate. He's never out for anybody else but himself. He makes that clear from the very beginning, but yet he's still got people tagging along with him. The things that you used to do in the 1950s. You know, bullies were bullies, and everyone seemed to respect the order. and I just have no idea why, but that's how it was. And then after the success of the first Back to the Future film, we got the second Back to the Future film in 1989, and the second and third films were filmed back to back. We got teased with it in 1985, where we get the classic last line, "Where we're going, we don't need any roads." And we pick up from there in 1989, but of course we're still in 1985 in the story. They jump ahead to the future in 2015. And I feel like the second film is just not as good as the first film. It's very enjoyable, but it's a big step down. I feel like there's a lot of iconic stuff in here. Clothes that he's wearing, the self-tying shoes, the hoverboard, all that stuff is iconic. I just feel like the plot gets a little bit convoluted. It's still a really enjoyable film, but if Back to the Future is one of the most iconic films of the 1980s, Back to the Future Part 2 is a pretty big step down. It feels like they kind of went the safe route. Some of the special effects don't hold up as well as the first film. The first film is still one of the best films of the 1980s, maybe one of the top 50 films all time, up there with the Terminator as far as best time travel movies. Now, Back to the Future 2, I feel like it's just really remembered for certain scenes in that movie. Obviously seeing Michael J. Fox aged up is always pretty cool. I love that scene with the pizza, expanding. I really wish that we still had that. We also lose some characters who were a big part of the first film. Claudia Wells took a break from acting in between the films, and she wasn't going to be coming back for the second and third one. Her mother had been diagnosed with cancer, and she decided that it was actually better for her to concentrate on that and take a break from acting, and they replaced her with Elizabeth Shue. Now, Elizabeth Shue's character just takes a big step back in both films. They find a way, both in Back to the Future Part 2 and Part 3, just for her to be out of the movie most of the time, just so they can cover that up. Same thing with Crispin Glover's character. You put him in the background so people don't really notice it. And really, the second and third films become a Marty and Doc Brown storyline. That's really it. That two of them in the second film, they're traveling around in 2015. At the very end of it, it's left on a cliffhanger. Doc Brown has been sent back to 1885, and we find out that he's going to die 1 week after he sends this letter telling Marty that he's okay. He's fallen in love with Mary Steenburgen's character, and he's looking like he's going to live a happy life. They actually hinted at this in Back to the Future 2 that Doc Brown always wanted to go back to the Old West. That's where he wanted to live. That was his dream. So he's living his dream now, but we find out he's going to die, so now he needs help from 1955 Doc Brown to get the DeLorean up and running again so he can go back there, save Doc Brown, and bring him back to the future, or to the past, however you want to look at it, because they're bouncing around a lot in the timelines in Back to the Future Part 2 and Part 3, and they're a lot of fun. They really are one movie separated into two. I actually love at the end of the second one how they end it and they put the trailer for Back to the Future Part 3, because they only came out 6 or 7 months apart from each other. That's the beauty of filming them back to back, and that doesn't always work, because the Matrix movies tried to do that about, 10 years after this, and it just did not work out. You're really taking a risk, but lucky for us, Back to the Future 2 is a pretty damn good movie, and Back to the Future Part 3 actually might be a little better than that. It's underrated from a plot and story standpoint. I think it wraps up the trilogy in a nice bow. The very end of the trilogy with Doc Brown and Mary Steenburgen on the train with their kids, it's very cheesy and very corny, and the 80s are filled with plenty of cheese, and I love that cheese, but that cheese is getting a little bit moldy with the very end scene with the train. I think they just went a little bit too far, and that's my personal opinion on it, but it's a very minor complaint. I think as far as trilogies go, the Back to the Future trilogy is actually probably one of the best. You could argue Parts 2 and Part 3 really take the safe route. It never really gets to the heights of the first Back to the Future, but we also don't have any failures in there. A lot of trilogies have a hard time sticking the landing, especially with the third film, and I don't think the Back to the Future trilogy had that problem. Obviously, when you have great actors throughout the entire trilogy of movies being led by Christopher Lloyd and Michael J. Fox, you really don't have too much to worry about. Steven Spielberg behind the scenes. Robert Zemeckis is a great director, knows how to work with special effects even to this day, so it all just came together and made a fantastic trilogy of movies. Obviously, the first one is one of the most iconic films of all time, but that's not to sell Parts 2 and 3 short. So if you've only seen the first Back to the Future movie and you kind of skipped out on Parts 2 and 3 because you don't think it's going to live up to it, it's not, but I really do think that you should check it out any which way you can, because they are still pretty damn good movies, and I was honestly selling them a little short until I rewatched them recently, and I was like, wow, these really are entertaining. I really had to eat my words from what I've said in the past about Back to the Future Part 2. It's really not that bad of a movie. It's very, very enjoyable. It's just that it's always going to be in the shadow of the first Back to the Future. But anyway, let's talk about these Universal 4K Blu-rays that came out back in 2020. But before we do that, if you are a fan of 4K Blu-ray reviews, movie reviews, podcasts, lists, and shorts, we try and do them all here on the channel, and nothing would help this channel out more than by you just simply liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Well, here it is, the Back to the Future trilogy on 4K. I got this last Black Friday for about $35, and it's actually only going for about $34 at the very moment of this filming on Amazon. And I gotta be honest with you guys, that is an absolute steal for this trilogy of 4Ks. It is incredible what Universal does. First of all, Universal gives us some fantastic packaging with all of their 4Ks. They give you a nice slipcover on the outside. Good paper stock, you know, it's a little bit cardboardy, but it doesn't wear and tear on the corners like you would expect. I really love what they do. And then you come inside, you slide this out, and it's like a book. It's actually very similar with what they do with all of their, like, packaging as far as, like, when they release movies in trilogies or just whole franchises like they did with the Fast and the Furious franchise or even the Alfred Hitchcock collection or the Universal Monsters collections. They all release them in these really nice packaging. You know, it's not cheap. They don't cheap out on it. The only thing I have a flaw with, when you come inside here, each film gets their own section. You get a 4K and a Blu-ray, so this is a 7-disc set because you get not only the 4K and the Blu-ray for each film, there's also bonus features on the 4K and the Blu-ray. The same exact bonus features. Is actually very strange that they did that, but you can watch the bonus features on the 4K and on the Blu-ray, and you also get a bonus disc in there. So not only do you get extras for each film individually, some music videos. For the first one, you get Huey Lewis and the News. The third one, you get, you know, ZZ Top. You get some behind the scenes, deleted scenes, a making of documentary for the first one. Then you get another making of at the very end with the bonus features. I mean, they loaded up on extras, and as a huge fan of extras like myself, I put a lot of value on that when you're buying movies on 4K Blu-ray, especially lately with studios like Paramount or Warner Brothers really taking it back and not really bringing us extras anymore, just releasing the film, and that's the only thing we get. The fact that Universal gave us every single bit of extra that's pretty much ever been released for each of these films individually, and then to give us a 7th bonus disc is just absolutely incredible. That's what a collector's edition should be, and this is definitely a definitive collector's edition of the Back to the Future trilogy. They do not leave any stone unturned as far as extras go. Interviews, deleted scenes, bloopers, I can go on and on and on. It'll take you hours and hours, days maybe, to even get through all of these just because there's so much for each film, and then just having that extra bonus disc, I cannot sell that short how awesome that is. And the fact that you get it on 4K and on Blu-ray. So all 3 4Ks are going to include Dolby Vision and HDR10. They have Dolby Atmos tracks on it, and both the visuals and the audio are reference quality. Not to mention that the films are all going to be in the 1.85 aspect ratio, so they are going to fill up your screen, and they look gorgeous. I mean, these are reference quality 4K discs. Like the DeLorean, you could see the handprints on the DeLorean or where they were painting it. Like, you see those marks, the skin tones, and the skin textures just all look amazing, look natural. Nothing ever looks overly flushed out. Now, the 4Ks are so good visually that it does kind of expose the bad special effects in parts 2 and part 3. Doesn't really have that problem with the first one, but they also were kind of hiding certain things that they really wanted to expand upon in the sequels, especially with the DeLorean. You know, you kind of see it flying around a little bit more, which you kind of have to do, but it doesn't look the greatest on these 4Ks. And it's not the 4K's fault, it's just that's how they filmed it back in 1985. I'm sure nobody was thinking that eventually people are going to be watching these at their houses in beautiful and stunning 4K, but man, they are all 3 gorgeous reference quality 4Ks visually. I mean, low amount of film grain, the colors pop. I mean, especially since these are very colorful movies, especially part 2. But every single color just pops off the screen. They're vivid, dynamic, deep blacks. I really just can't stress enough that everything just looks perfect. You know, sometimes you're watching a 4K and it can't hit those deep blacks, and you're like, is there something wrong with my 4K player? If you're ever worried about that and you think there might be something wrong, put in one of the Back to the Future 4Ks, and I promise you, since they're reference quality, you'll know if there's something wrong with your 4K player if these don't look anything less than perfect visually. Now, the audio tracks are all great as well. Like I said, Dolby Atmos tracks. Absolutely stunning. Also, these movies have a great score, plenty of sound effects. Obviously, you want to make sure that the dialogue is still crisp and clear. You could set it at a certain volume, set your remote down, and not have to worry about it, and you can do that with all of these 4Ks. Now, the Blu-ray discs are just downgraded versions of these to 1080p. They're pretty much the exact same menus on the 4Ks and the Blu-rays, so it's really just there as an extra for you guys because you don't even need them. If you're only going to be watching these on 4K, you got all your bonus features on there. A lot of the times, most of the time actually, we get all our extras on the Blu-ray disc, but we didn't have to worry about that here. So I really did appreciate that, but if you want to start the movie in the living room with the 4K player, but you only got a Blu-ray player in the bedroom, you know what? You could stop where you are, pick it up in the bedroom with the Blu-ray and not have to worry about a thing. It's still a pretty good quality Blu-ray. Obviously, the 4Ks are going to be slightly better. They're going to be brighter. That's going to be the first thing that you notice. Colors and even the blacks are still pretty deep on the Blu-rays. Not hitting what they hit in the 4Ks because the 4Ks are just that good. But these would definitely be on the higher end of the Blu-ray spectrum as well. So very impressed with that. I mean, Universal just did a phenomenal job with these 4Ks. And I mean, they're always on sale. So I don't know if they're just not selling great, but I swear to God, they're on sale every single holiday. And right now, just at its regular price with no holiday going on, it's about $35, which is just incredible. It's a steal. If you don't have these in your collection, you are truly, truly missing out. We're living in the day where you, like, if you wanted to buy Fast X on 4K, it's actually a little bit more money than to have the entire trilogy of Back to the Future on 4K, and you're getting 7 discs in great packaging. I just absolutely love that. And one thing I skipped right over, and I don't know why, these Universal packaging, I just don't like this. I don't like that you have to slide the discs in and out like that. I feel like I just don't like that scraping along the bottom. I think there's a better way to do it. I understand why they do this because you get that beautiful artwork where the discs are hidden. I appreciate that. You know, a lot of time that stuff they would put the disc over it. I understand, but that is my very, very minor complaint about this entire package. If I was going to rate this entire trilogy, the entire 4K trilogy, on a score of 1 to 10, I'm going to give this a 9.5 out of 10. It is an almost perfect set, and if you haven't picked this one up, it is a steal at its current price, and I can highly recommend it. But before we get out of here today, it is Friday, and that means it's time for our digital code giveaway. In every single video that we put out on Friday, I'm going to ask you guys 2 digital code giveaway questions. All you have to do is answer one of those in the comment section below, and as long as you do that, you come back to this Monday's video. We put your name on a magic wheel. We spin that bad boy 2 times, and the 2 names it lands on, they have their choice of the digital codes that you've seen on your screen before you today. And since we're talking about Back to the Future, I wanted to ask you guys, what is your favorite trilogy of films of all time? Now, that only includes 3 movies, so no franchises. It's got to be just a 1 through 3. You can pick one of the 3 Star Wars trilogies, though. I mean, they're just all over the place. But if that's one of your favorites, pick one of those. You can pick the Back to the Future trilogy. So what is your favorite trilogy of all time? And then I've been watching actually a lot of Michael J. Fox stuff this year, which is kind of weird. I didn't plan it that way, but I got The Frighteners on 4K. I watched this. I watched that documentary on Apple about Michael J. Fox this year. So I've been really watching a lot of Michael J. Fox. Also, my friend of mine was talking to me about his appearance at Night Court yesterday. So Michael J. Fox has been on my mind lately. I wanted to ask you guys, what is your favorite Michael J. Fox performance? Is it Back to the Future, or is there something else out there? Maybe you like Family Ties. You can include that. Let me know in the comment section below. And while you guys are down there, make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, get out in those streets, and tell your friends about us, and then we'll be seeing you around.